Now is a good time to explain the concept of the key. Just going to flip over to our diagrams here. Let's go to the next one. All right, so the whole concept of what we're going to do here is we're going to create a shadow structure. And this is really common in web development where you have attributes or items in the DOM. In this particular case, we're adding items to the DOM. So we have our body, we have our SVG, and within our SVG, we're going to add a whole bunch of shapes. The user is going to define these, they're going to put them on. So what we do is we create a structure which is going to mimic the structure that we have in our DOM. And the way to connect them, there's a whole bunch of ways to connect them. We can connect them by having this in the DOM actually point to the object, or we can have that done the other way. But I'm going to show you this way for educational purposes. I'm not saying which way is the best way. This is our way, and for educational purposes, this shows really well. The way I'm going to do this is within the drawing class, we're going to have the drawing class create a key for every single object it creates. It's going to give me that key, and it's going to put that key in the DOM object as an attribute. And once I have that attribute in the DOM object, when you click in it, I can grab it. And with that, I can then go back to our drawing and I can get that shape directly. Because in the case that we're doing right now, we're making it quite simple. We're just saying almost all the data is exactly the same. But in more complex situations, which is every situation, we now want to store a whole bunch more data with it. And often I don't like storing the data as attributes within the DOM. I like storing it as a shadow object and keeping the data within that, because that gives me the power to do a lot more processing and whatnot in it. So this has worked really well for me over the years. So what I do is I create a relationship by assigning a key to this object and then taking that key and putting it in here. And I literally call it K1, K2, K3. Now, some recommendations: never, ever, ever use an index. And the reason for that is as soon as we allow them to manipulate this, delete them, do anything like that, then all of a sudden now this index may not relate directly to that array anymore. So indexes are very dangerous. I've been burned by them so many times that I've just quit using them. So let's go ahead and use this technique. All right, so when we create a circle, so now what we're going to do as we go back to our code now is inside of our drawing, we're going to create a function called create circle. And what create circle is going to do is it's going to, for us, because I don't want to put the code in anything that I put inside of a test, I may have to put inside of index.js. So I don't want the logic to do that. I don't want this guy to even know about those shapes directly unless it absolutely has to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to circle here. So the test that I'm going to actually run now is I'm going to test that when I create a circle, it's going to give me a key back. So I'm going to create a const. I just call it K1, which is equal to that. And what I would like that key to actually be, I'm going to expect that. So notice how this isn't going to give me a circle back. This is actually going to give me the key to the circle. So now what I actually want K1 to be equal to is I actually want it to be equal to the string K1. And then the next one, I want it to be K2 and K3 and K4. Oh, I'm not going to make it a rectangle. I'm actually certainly going to make it a rectangle. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this again just so you can see the idea. And this is going to create me a second key, and I really want that second key to be K2. So I'm going to save that and actually run it. And of course this is going to give me an error, but we'll put the code together to try to test that. And what we'll see, that's cool. All right. So what we're going to see, and I can do this 1,000 ways, what we're going to see is we're going to want the ability of being able to generate keys. And I use counters to generate keys. So what I'm going to do to make life a little easier for me, I'm going to create another method in here, and I'm just going to call it next key. all I want this guy to return to me is what the next key is. So in this case, I'm just going to go poof. And what I'm going to do then is before I actually do this, I'm going to actually test that method. So what I'm going to say is expect panel.next key, oops, to be, and I'd like it to start with 1. All right, so you can see that we're changing this just a little bit. And if I call it again, I'd like it to be 2. And if I call it again, I'd like it to be 3. And we'll maybe get rid of a few of these later, but so you get the idea. So I just want to do that. So how can I get my object to do that? Run my tests, and hopefully the test fails right at line 29. And the reason it'll fail again is because next key won't be. Right, to be K1, and of course it's undefined. So that's great. So the way I'm going to do it, I'm going to just say here, this.counter is equal to 0. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, instead of doing that, oh, I should have done a return rate. So return, doesn't matter actually, quote, let's use a cool new way of doing it. And let's get K, and then what we're going to do is concatenate on that this.counter, and then we're going to add 1 to it. Again, that's a little bit tricky if you just first add it, but it doesn't matter. You can do that the long way or the short way. And that's basically saying counter is equal to counter plus 1 after it uses it. So let's see what the problem is here. My 2b still doesn't work. Yes, look at that. Received a function next key. So that received a function next key. And of course, we didn't use it right. We got to put a $sign here. All right, let's see if that turns out any better. And something still failed. And look at that, it's got the function next key. And of course, all of you saw that. So what I was doing, I wasn't actually calling the function because I didn't put the brackets on it. And this is why, again, it's so important to run that test that fails, because I might not be doing what I expect it to. So let's do that again. And rerun the test. And as you can see, a line of code or two, a line of code, a line of code, and test. So this is still failing. So see what it's doing? I want it to start with 1. I don't want a key 0. I want it to actually start with 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this counter to 1. And here we go. Let's try that. Now I'm hoping it does pass. So writing my failing tests. And the error now is, oh yeah, look at this. It is on line 34. Oh, and it's undefined. Oh, of course. So now we got past these tests. So the next key function is working beautifully. So the next thing we got to do now is we have to get past here. And this now, if we go back to our create rectangle is not returning anything. So therefore the error, we're going to get an error. So let's just write just what we need to return it. So what we're going to do is we're going to say return. No, let's not do that. So we're going to say const key equals next key. And then we're going to return key. All right, let's see where that's failing. Next key is not defined, of course. So now, because it's inside of an object, we have to go this dot next key. So we want to run the next key from this object. And the way we tell it from this object is by using the this keyword. Okay, and now it fails. And to be K1, and of course, we've already used up key 1, key 2, and key 3, so now we're going to make this key 4. So this is actually key 4. Excellent. Now, why is it passing? Oh, look at that, key 5, of course. We did a couple of them. So key 4 and key 5. All right, we should now start getting a green light. So you see how we're doing this, just one at a time, and fixing the errors. Yay, we got 4 tests that pass. All right, so the next step now is we've got the key generated, but we didn't actually do anything with it. So now what I want to do is I could envision us needing the ability of being able to go and get an object from this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say const, and let's change that to K4, K5. We will forget to change the test. And again, if we make a mistake here, we're going to get an error anyway, so that's fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to create our first rectangle. So I'll just call it rectangle 1 is equal to, and I can envision us needing a method in there called get shape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it a key, and I expect the shape to come back. Right? Now I wrote my test before I wrote my stub. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually write the stub, which is not quite in the right order, but I get too excited, and I'm going to pass it the key. And I just want to make sure you understand you don't need to use the same word. And what I'm going to return here, what I should return here is shapes, the key. All right, let's check that out and see if that's going to pass. So what I'm trying to do now is making sure that if I have a key to an object and I know what the key is to the object in this particular case, I want to make sure that I'm actually getting the object that I expect it to. Okay, now here's the interesting thing is I didn't actually put any test in here. So I want to actually put a test in here. So expect rect1. And I think all I'm going to do is check to see whether it exists. So all I'm going to do is check to make sure that I'm going to use a metric called to be truthy. And all it is making sure that it actually gets something. Again, I'm trying to write my failing test. And it should fail. And it says reference key is not defined. Oh, of course. So what I want to use is I want to get one of these. So K4, for example. Not even the error that we expected to get. So I'm going to save that, run it again. What I should be able to do is get K4 out of there. All right, shapes is not defined. Where is that? Just need to move a little bit. Return shapes. Oh, okay. So shapes is not defined in line 31, so that's over here. And of course, again, this has got to be, I'm trying to reference this one up here. And right now it's starting off as an empty array. So what I got to do is reference this guy. So this guy should be this dot shapes. Let's run the test again. Back up, and it's to be truthy. So what is it saying now? It's not, it's received undefined, and we want it to be truthy. So let's look at this. So when I say get shape, and if we look at get shape, it's not returning anything. And the reason for that is we never did add it to the shapes array. So let's do that. So we didn't actually create a rectangle. So what we're going to do now is we've got a key. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go const rectangle equals new rectangle. Okay, so that is going to be, it's in the same class, so we can say rectangle. And we're going to pass it the x and the y. So let's start off by not passing it the x and y. Let's just do that. Okay, let's have a look at why it failed. To be truthy, we still didn't return anything. So we still haven't added this rectangle to the shape. So this dot shapes, and we want to put it at that key, is going to be equal to our rectangle. All right, so I just want to make sure everybody's clear. So what we're using is we're using this data structure that we created up here in the constructor, so that now drawing has this object. In the object, the key is going to be the key that we're generating. For that key, we're going to put in the shape. In this case, it's going to be a rectangle. And then what we're going to do is when I ask to get it, I'm going to be able to get it by key. So let's save this guy and see if that test works. It does work. That's perfect. So the next thing we want to test now is we want to make sure that the rectangle we got, so let's grab a couple of expects here. Let's grab another one. So now that's cool. Now we want to make sure the rectangle dot x, rectangle 1 dot x, and let's see which one this should be. And we want to actually change this a little bit. So I'm going to change this to 201, 202, just to make sure that nothing can get wrecked on me. And what it should be is 101 and 102, right? That should be the x and y. So I'm going to ask this guy to be 101, and this guy to be 102, and this should be x and y. If this is working. And of course, this is not working. This will not work. And at this point, we know why it's not working, but let's pretend I didn't know why it wasn't going to work. And it's going to say is, yeah, and it's undefined. Of course it's undefined. So what I might do here is just before the expect right there, I might actually do print the rectangle 1 just to see what it's giving us. And okay, again, we know what's happening there is because we're not passing it the x and y. So because we're not passing it the x and y, it's not getting set. But we can back up and you see it's showing us the objects, and it's actually, showing us the x and y. And the reason for that is because we're passing null to it, it's receiving undefined and it's setting undefined to it. So what we're going to go back to here is we're going to set this x, comma y, and now we're going to run it and see if it works. That test still failed. 101 and 102. Expected, oh, and it received undefined. Let's have a look and see why that is. And you guys probably caught it faster than me as we didn't change it to the rectangle. So, right, and we don't need this guy anymore, so I'm just going to delete it out there. I hate leaving console logs in there because it pollutes my data and all of a sudden gets so confusing. So let's have a look. All right, so our tests are passing. So that's pretty cool now. So what we've done is we've created a structure. We haven't added this to the DOM yet. We're going to do that next. But what we're doing is we're creating a nice structure for being able to talk to from the browser or from tests. So you see the interface is working quite nice. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually create the draw. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to pass it a structure And inside of that structure, we're going to want it to create that shape. Because right now what we're doing is we're just working with shadow objects. This has not created the DOM objects yet. So we're going to create the DOM objects.